This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. This is a very important video. It's very important that everybody who is a human being knows and understands what this is. The United Nations has adopted what they're calling the Pact for the Future to transform, quote unquote, global governance. Of course, this is without any civilians' compliance. This is with them saying, we're going to write and create a pact for the future with all governments because we're going to have a global governance, whether you like it or not. So you may remember, many of you who have been subscribed to my channels for a while now, talking about the pandemic treaty. The pandemic treaty continually did not get signed. And there was a reason for this. And I covered it when it didn't get signed and approved. And it wasn't because there were any countries who were opposed to it. They just realized that by calling it the pandemic treaty, that way too many civilians were getting way too suspicious of it. And in fact, more and more people were covering it because they realized that these unelected officials at the United Nations, the WHO, and the World Economic Forum were trying to sign a treaty which would give the WHO authority over all of us, which means that all government officials who aren't elected in the first place, but let's say hypothetically they are, that the WHO can chime in above them and let's just say lock us down once again, because ultimately, as you'll see in this video, what this is about is the climate agenda, which most people don't discuss. The alt-right media calls it a climate cult. You must pay attention to the climate agenda because the climate agenda is the same thing as the pandemic we just saw. It's lockdown rules, it's digital IDs, it's global surveillance and tracking your every movement, all in the name of climate, which of course is not real. The only thing going on with the weather and the climate is weather modification and weather manipulation, which the government has patented, the government has been using for years and years and years now, and they're trying to convince you that something is naturally happening in the world, so we all need to change the way that we live. And of course, that means staying indoors more, doing things online more, not eating things that are healthy for our body like meat, eating bugs instead, and making the ultimate quote-unquote sacrifice for the betterment of humanity. But really, it's only for their betterment because they're the ones who are manipulating the weather. So let me get back to this. The pandemic treaty got shot down, and quietly, the United Nations has adopted this pact for the future. And there's articles in America talking about the UN adopts pact that aims to save global cooperation on their own website. They're talking about the pact for the future and global governance. They even say the pact, which also includes an annex on working toward a responsible and sustainable digital future, was adopted without a vote at the start of the two-day summit of the future. The agreement came after some 9 months of negotiations because this is the pandemic treaty under the guise of Pact for the Future. And this gives them the authority, which now gives them the push that they need towards total totalitarian agendas. This threatens all sovereignty. This threatens all freedoms. And the reason they're using the terms digital is because they're gonna force everybody into doing everything digitally. And this has never been about your convenience to be able to buy faster online with making an online payment versus going to the store. This is to entrap you. That's what this digital movement is. It's to entrap us. We're giving up our freedoms to technology, and people hear that and they roll their eyes. They don't get what it means. It means that everything you do, everything you say, every single thing will be done digitally. They're going to remove the ability to barter. They're going to remove the ability to use cash, and they're going to force you into compliance. And I believe this has everything to do with the mark of the beast. So what this is completely unconstitutional. This gives people who were never elected in the first place, this gives organizations the ability to declare national and worldwide global emergencies without anyone's consent. They tell you that this is in the name of inclusion and equity and freedom and love, because that's how they operate. They tell everybody out there that all this stuff is about third world countries that aren't, they don't get equality, they don't get access to the shots. It's all make-believe. Those third world countries don't want access to these things. They don't want these people meddling in their lives, and they're forcing their way into their lives, and they're forcing their way into our lives without our consent and without our say. So here's one of the quotes from the Pact for the Future. Quote, "Climate change is one of the greatest challenges of our time, with adverse impacts that are disproportionately felt by developing countries, especially those that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change. We commit to accelerate meeting our obligations under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement." All this is saying, if anybody out there doesn't understand, you have a pact for the future created by unelected, unaccountable New World Order members who are telling you that this is about global governance. And remember what I've been warning everybody about global governance. When you hear the controlled alt-right media, who is funded by the same people they tell you are your enemies, right? The alt-right media, the Daily Wire, funded all by the same people. They all talk about these things, but they don't warn you about what they really mean. They don't tell you what the climate agenda is, and they most definitely don't spend their time explaining to you what the World Economic Forum is talking about when they're talking about AI governance. AI governance. You hear all these things about what these globalists talk about, and all everybody out there does is meme them to death, talk about eating Z-bugs, and these are all truths. But they never mention the fact that this entire global government they speak of is going to be run through artificial intelligence and technology, which is one and the same, which means that we all have to be compliant to technology to give them access to control our lives. If we break free and we pull back on technology without letting them move forward, which is what they're hell-bent on doing, that's what they're telling you here. Moving forward in the name of equality to make sure that we have a digital future. Think about what they're saying in these statements. They're throwing words in there about equality while saying sustainable digital future, because it's all run digitally. So they need you to comply. They need you to get on board with the next stages of technology. They need you to not notice those 5G towers. And they most certainly don't want you to understand what the digital ID is. Because you see, the concept that people out there are giving about the digital ID and the Google Wallet and all these little things that we keep hearing about moving towards getting everything digital, your passport and all this stuff, that's the enslavement right there. Because your every movement under this is going to be monitored. And the only way they could do any of this stuff is digitally. They can't do it, and they haven't been able to do it over the last 100 years of them wanting to do it. We've all heard quotes from George Bush to Henry Kissinger talking about a new world order. They can't do it and couldn't do it until everybody with their free will started to become dependent on tech. They gave it to you for free. They gave it to you for cheap. They got you for the last 15 to 20 years so obsessed and dependent on technology that you couldn't even think for 1 second what life would be like without it. And that's the point. So now that they know we're all dependent on it, now that they know that the biggest addiction out there is the internet, is the cell phone. They'll talk about all these other addictions, but they don't talk about how addicted people are to tech. You can't go anywhere without seeing people walking around looking at their phone 24/7. Go to a mall, go to a doctor's office. Every head is looking down. None are looking up at the stuff they're spraying on us from the sky. They're all looking down because they're obsessed. This is the statement made from the United Nations. Listen, and remember, these people are not elected. The UN was formed in 1945, okay, at the end of World War II. At the end of World War II, and the purpose of it was supposed to be maintaining international peace, right? But that's not what the purpose ever was. You're seeing what the purpose is now. So this is their press release. World leaders today adopted a pact for the future that includes a global digital compact and declaration on future generations. This pact is the culmination of an inclusive years-long process to adapt international cooperation to the realities of today and the challenges of tomorrow. The most wide-ranging international agreement in many years, covering entirely new areas as well as issues on which agreement has not been possible in decades. The pact aims, above all, to ensure the international institutions can deliver in the face of a world that has changed dramatically since they were created. As the Secretary General has said, quote, "We cannot create a future fit for our grandchildren with a system built by our grandparents." Overall, the agreement of the pact is a strong statement of countries' commitment to the UN, the international system, and international law. Leaders set out a clear vision of an international system that can deliver on its promises. It is more representative of today's world and draws on the energy and expertise of governments, civil society, and other key partners. And let me just take a pause there for a second, because what else is amazing about this is never before have we seen so many countries, so many nations, so against their own government. Because all the civilians are realizing that the people who are in power were not elected. It's a small portion of mind control sheeple who actually vote for the people who are attempting to enslave them, because the propaganda is working on them so much so that they're actually asking for a communist government. So the majority of people do not believe that any of these people are being elected. We can look at Spain, we can look at America, we can look at the UK, we can look at Australia. The civilians are all realizing that these people were not elected. They're placing them in power while they're giving our rights up openly to an organization like the United Nations. And the common person just goes, I don't know what that means. Okay, I'm too busy worrying about my own life and being on my phone and social media and taking pictures of my dinner and my fingernails and everything else going on and uploading it around the clock. Because all these people really are caring about all day is a photo op they could take so they can upload it to their Instagram account, while our supposed elected leaders have sold us out completely to a corporation, which is really what the UN is. And again, let me remind you, this Pact for the Future is the Pandemic Treaty, which gives authority to them to do as they please. And if you don't think that they're going to continue to do this, think again. They don't need to make up outbreaks because, like I said, the outbreak was just one part of Agenda 2030. There will be more fake outbreaks because they need to inject you. But what's really important to them is moving forward with the climate initiative, because that's what they're going to use to get conservatives and Democrats convinced that they need to start giving up their rights and change the way they live so that they can not even realize that they're imprisoning themselves. Because literally, if you read, you pay attention to the carbon footprint and the climate agenda and what the plan is, you will see that it's no different than the way a prisoner lives in jail. You have curfews, you have allotted time to leave the house, you have allotted allowance that you could use to buy food that they tell you could buy, which isn't really freedom because they're really forcing you into plant-based food. You might as well be in prison eating the puke food that they feed the prisoners. Theirs might be better, actually, than some of this stuff that they're trying to offer. So they go on to say in this pact that the Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations open the door for new opportunities and untapped possibilities, said the Secretary General during his remarks at the opening of the Summit of the Future. The President of the General Assembly noted that the pact would lay the foundations for a sustainable, just, and peaceful global order for all peoples and nations. Can I repeat that for everybody out there? Because I'm sure there's going to be a blue box under my video about a new world order. They are just quoted as saying a peaceful global order. The headline for this article is UN adopts groundbreaking pact for the future to transform global governments. Has anybody out there opted into this? Is anybody out there aware of the fact that they're using the term global now? You're a citizen, if you're listening to this in America, of the United States of America. If you're listening in the UK, you're a citizen of the UK. This is not supposed to be occurring like this, where they could just openly say, hey, guess what? We're going to have a peaceful global order for all peoples and nations. No one elected them. Nobody put them in power. They've just taken power. And it's our consent and it's our adopting of technology that's giving them the power. These militaries that you think are here to defend your nation work for the UN. So they feel untouchable and fully protected going out in the open, using words like equality and love, and we care about peace, and all these suckers, that's all they hear. Oh, love, equality, yup. Because they don't know how mind control and hypnotism works. So they think that these people are talking about their best interests. It's like a serial killer coming to your front door, stabbing you in the throat and telling you that he loves you while he's doing it. And then person getting stabbed going, I love you too, this is great. That's what this is the equivalent of. The Pact covers a broad range of issues, including peace and security, sustainable development, climate change, digital cooperation, that's important, human rights, gender, youth and future generations, and the transformation of global governments. I mean, are you kidding me? And some of these people still call us conspiracy theorists, right? Incredible. And they don't realize how hell-bent the media is with all this stuff they keep coming out with to make them laugh off the stuff that we're talking about. We're talking about your freedoms being eradicated. And again, they pander to the dumbed-down sheeple right now who are empowering this. But they're going to get it just as bad as the rest of us have been getting it, with censorship, with the government turning on you, with the government coming after you. They just don't realize it yet because they're so dumb. Look at some of the terms. The main thing, climate change. There's your carbon footprint, right? There's your tracking with digital cooperation that they're talking about. Digital cooperation. They're going to force you into cooperating digitally, which means they're going to push you out. Remember during that where they said, anybody who doesn't take this magic potion, if you refuse to take it, guess what? You're going to be pushed out of society. That's what they were saying in a lot of these countries like Australia. They flat out said, if you don't take it, you can't be a part of our society. You can't go to the store. You can't do this. Civilians said, screw you. There were still some civilians who were so psychotic and unhinged that they said, yeah, forget about those people. I won't worry about what this shot's supposed to do, which is make me immune. I'll just turn on my fellow citizen because I'm a complete brain dead sheeple, right? This is what they're saying. Digital cooperation is the same thing. They're going to try to force us out by saying that you can't buy or sell, you can't go here, you can't do this unless you're on board with the digital ID. And remember, that also has to do with freedoms of speech online, because they don't want you to be able to speak freely on the internet anymore, not because they care about what gender you identify as, not because they care if you're castrating yourself, because they care about protecting themselves from the people. And they want to silence people like you who listen to this channel and me. And they're going to try to hold us accountable and say a video like this, because I disagree with their global cooperation governance, is federal crime now, because it's hate speech, because it's bad, and all these people continue to empower it. It's incredible. So the article, or the treaty here, goes on to say, in the area of peace and security, the most progressive and concrete commitment to Security Council reform since the 1960s, with plans to improve the effectiveness and representativeness of the council, including by redressing the historical underrepresentation of Africa as a priority, right? I don't hear anybody in Africa crying that they want to be a part of this. In fact, I was talking recently about this. Third world countries don't want any part of this stuff. They want to be left alone. It's these people who continue to go there and force this onto them. They're forcing them to get these shots because they're using them as test experiments. They're forcing them to change their way of life. They show you these videos and they're like, look at these countries. Look how they're living. And these people are living a lot better than most of us are. Why? Because they're not in a psychosis like we're all in. Because they're not consuming media every day. They're not on the internet all the time. They're literally living a life where they get up, they figure out how to get food, provide food, take care of their family. They pray, they do those types of things. That's it. Day to night, right? Well, they can't have that with this global cooperation. They need to force everybody in. They make it seem like, oh, yeah. Because this is for the sheeple in America here. They're like, oh, yeah, Africa, poor people in Africa. Man, you know, they got it bad. They're left out. They don't want to be in. Nobody wants to be in on this except the stupid sheeple who actually think a global government is about love and caring for each other. It's about global slavery. Like I've said a million times, there ain't enough prison cells to throw all the civilians in. Okay? So they're using technology and your home itself to turn it into a prison. And people roll their eyes all the time when I say it. They're like, oh yeah, you put all these devices in your home that give the NSA and the government access to listen to you at all times. They might not be doing anything right now with that, but it's all in your home and you've gotten desensitized, you've gotten used to it, you've got dependent on it, so you're not getting rid of it. So then when they flip the switch, it's all in your home already. The cameras are in your home, the listening devices are, guess what? You're in a cell. And then they say, well, your smart lock's not going to let you out. Your smart meter is going to shut off your electricity. And your smart thermostat is going to make sure that even though it's 5 degrees out, you can't have the heat on. Oh, and by the way, your refrigerator is only going to be on X amount of hours a day, so you can't keep a large amount of food in your home because we can't have you being self-sufficient. You got to be dependent on us. And the next thing you know, guess what? You're a prisoner and you don't even realize it. It's a dystopian reality that they're creating. So they go on to say the entire pact is designed to turbocharge implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. That is Agenda 2030. That is what you see all these celebrities like Leo DiCaprio, all of these people who sold out the United States of America, who are government assets and government agents and globalists. They're all holding up signs, always talking about Sustainable Development Goals of Agenda 2030, because that is the enslavement blueprint. Climate action, how they can control your food, telling you what you can eat, what you can wear, how often you can use the washing machine, how often you can flush your toilet. People don't understand how deep this is until it actually happens. Remember, people like me were warning about the outbreak before it happened. I warned about it for years. People who have followed my channel will attest to that. And I said flat out what they were trying to get inside of you, what kind of tech they wanted to get inside, and how they wanted to implement lockdowns, all in preparation for Agenda 2030 and the climate initiative. That is why the truth movement was replaced by the alt-right media, because the alt-right media, while they tickle your ears and make you laugh about the crazy crap that Democrats do, they do not cover what Agenda 2030 is. They do not expose the climate agenda and the carbon footprint. They just dismiss it as a climate cult. They do not tell you how technology is the tool needed for a new world order. They don't, and they won't. And again, the only chance we have, because the most common thing I hear and have heard over the years is people telling me, what can we do? What can we do? As if as a mass group we could do something against, a global military government. What you can do is everybody can get off the technology. That takes you individually separating yourself, becoming self-sufficient, and spreading the word of what they're planning on doing and how tech serves a purpose. This blueprint, it just tells you to a T what I've been saying for years. And I've been really harping on it, no pun intended with the word harp and the climate. I've really been harping on it in 2024, talking about how the dependence on technology and digitalizing everything is what they need. And that's why they're saying they're going to force digital cooperation, because they're going to say that all this stuff that's going on, all these crimes, everything can be stopped, hacking, all this with your digital ID, your carbon footprint's a part of it. They need you to get you to comply first. It's not just about having a digital ID to see if you have a potion inside of you. It's about more than that. So the UN has adopted a global governance without your consent, without your permission. This is where citizens should be going. Aren't these people in Congress the ones we voted in? Where are they? Where are your Republicans that all these conservatives love so much? Because they always talk a big game, like Gates and, Marjorie Taylor Greene. They all talk a great game. They're supposed to be in power representing, and they're not. And it's very clear that they're not. And it's very clear that Trump's not going to be either. This is a deception. These people are playing us like fiddles until it's too late, because we continue to give them our time without doing anything about what these globalists are doing. It takes our cooperation. Get off the tech. Make people aware that they're flat out telling you at the UN that they have a pact for the future, which is the pandemic treaty. It's the same thing that they told you, they didn't get enough signatures in the pandemic treaty. They just told you that without even a vote, which it doesn't matter anyway, because none of these people are voted in, so who cares what they vote for at the UN? Nobody picked these people to represent any of us, and nobody's on board with the global governance. They're just telling you that they're doing it and getting away with it because there's no pushback. So they're telling you we have a pact for the future and that we now have global governance, and it's going to take your cooperation. It's going to take us forcing you in to a digital infrastructure, which again, That is the key thing that no one mentions about the World Economic Forum. They talk a great game about how much they can't stand these people, the Billy Gates, the Klaus Schwabs. Everything they discuss at the World Economic Forum is all tied into AI governance. AI governance. So what does it take to have an AI governance? It takes you to be forced into a digital ID and being on board with technology, which means the only thing that really can be done is removing yourself from it, as hard as that sounds, as hard as it sounds to do that. Because think of why they've waited 20 years, why they've waited, so that we'd all be so dependent on tech, and then those of you out there with kids, pass it on to your kids. And now it's a world that just runs on tech, right? How many of you have gone somewhere where they're making you scan the menu at a restaurant, where you go there and they go, oh, welcome to Chili's. Oh, we don't have a menu for you, but you could scan with your phone. And you go, I don't have a phone. They go, you don't have a phone? Oh, welcome to this place. You need a phone to take a picture of a QR code so you can enter and you'll pay digitally. Does anyone notice they forced you into this? Because they know that the majority of people are small that aren't on board with the tech. And they don't care if you go, well, I don't have it. They go, well, tough. Everybody else does now. And that's how we've gotten to this point. So the UN has moved forward with the Pact for the Future. What does that mean? It means that we now have our global order in place. Not that it wasn't already, but this right here is the totalitarian playbook right in front of our faces. And guess what everyone's too concerned about? All the ridiculous stuff that the media wants you to be concerned with. Puff Daddy, Trump, and Harris, as if your vote actually counts. And no civilians are taking any action against this. And really the action that's needed to be taken is opting out. That's the action. That's the action. They want you to think that someone like me is calling for violence. I'm not calling for violence at all. I'm saying to opt out. Opt out. Remove yourself. The government is no longer working for you. That is clear. In fact, it's so clear that the UN is telling you that you are a global citizen. You're no longer a citizen of the United States of America because now they have authority over you and they could declare a national emergency at any time. They can declare martial law at any time. And then all the actors in Congress won't be held accountable for it. They'll be underground anyway, but they're going to do this and they're going to roll in their UN military. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And still people out there will call us conspiracy nuts because they're too weak. They're too weak, they're too gullible, and they're too deep in the hypnosis. They actually think that these people care about love and unity and, ooh, we're going to help third world countries. Yeah, third world countries that want no part of this at all. In fact, they're stripping them of their rights the same way that liberals in America are stripping conservatives of their rights or stripping regular people of their rights. It's utter insanity that this is being empowered by really the dumbest people that have ever lived. That's the people who are defending this. They're empowering it, and they're trying to silence people like me and you from speaking out against it. It's literally 1984, and these people are living not only in an alternate reality, the ones that support this, they're literally not even alive. They're not even conscious. There's no critical thought going through their mind, and they're okay with all this stuff. It's incredible. I thank everybody for being here. I'll cover this in more detail. Any other stuff that comes out of this two-day UN event, please share this video with others. Sorry for the long rant. I had to just go off on this. I've been covering this for so long, and now we're getting closer. It's always been about Agenda 2030, and this is it right in front of you. You can thank your celebrities, your social influencers, and you can thank the dumb people who continue to vote, who continue to think that these people they vote for are going to save them from this as they continue to go online and be on their social medias and constantly upload their consciousness to the internet and give their thoughts. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous that we're putting up with this. They've just declared a global new world order right in front of our faces because they know they can get away with it. Incredible. I thank you for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.